What up, what up, what up, what up? What is going on, everybody? What is going on? We're not going to play too much of that. We don't want to get in trouble, but I think it's only right to get started with a little OMG as we have, I'm not going to say Mr. OMG himself, but the guy behind the OMG sign and the phenomenon that became the OMG sign and all of that with the song. And of course, Jose Iglesias, who's the creator of the song. But yeah, so we're going to have some fun. Thank you guys for joining us. I was thinking, do I really do a show this week? Thanksgiving gonna be a little crazy. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, why not? First of all, got to get in here and give thanks to everybody for everything this year, right? And we'll get into that. And then I thought about why not have it with someone who I think, like myself, just as a fan of the team that we all root for, would probably have a lot to be thankful for, right? That we could have some fun discussing all that. But you guys already know who my guest is. Let me not waste time. Not waste too much of his time. He's on the road. Um, we know him as J Mac, right? Name is Jerome, but he can tell us more about that. But Jay, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing well, Hector. Thanks for having me. And I will be, I will stop driving in about another minute and a half. I'm just trying to get over to my exit. I got out of the shop a little late today, as I was mentioning earlier. Still selling and sending out a lot of OMG signs that people have ordered throughout the the tail end of the season and into the playoffs. That it's been an overwhelming response. So trying to just get as many of these out before Thanksgiving comes, as well as get some off my plate prior to the final rush before Christmas. But I'm grateful to be here. I'm happy that you have me on. It's I've been a fan of yours from afar. Uh, Learned about you this season, and I'm going to have a question for you, as I know you'll have for me at some point that I'll ask. But I definitely appreciate all you do for the community in terms of um, sharing your wisdom, your own blunt thoughts, and you know, you're well known throughout the stadium, and I'm glad you gave me an opportunity to talk about myself, about whatever people want to talk about on your platform. So thank you.
No, no, for sure. And I'm sure the people are happy to be here. We got people coming in already, and I'm sure they'll have questions. But man, listen, the feeling is mutual. And part of doing this is, like you said, you have a question for me, maybe one, maybe two or three. I have some questions for you. But part of this is also getting to know each other, right? Really, I know we've got to know each other in passing at the stadium a couple of times, outside the stadium. We did the show with Keith. Shout out to Keith, Shay and Sons. And that was a ton of fun. But yeah, so let's start there because I know from watching, also shout out to Anthony Subway to Shay from watching when you were on with him. And guys, bear with Jay. You guys heard him. He's on the road. He's about to stop, pull over, turn on the lights and all that. We could barely see him, but he's there.
I'm
um,
here.
but I know, from watching the show, your name is Jerome, and I forget the last name exactly how to pronounce it, right?
Yeah.
You could tell the people that or anything. But my thing is, right, I know you as J Mac. So I don't know if you prefer Jerome or J Mac. You can tell me that. But if you don't mind, I call you J Mac. It's like I told I don't know if you know Skills, great Knicks fan, Mets fan. I was talking to her the other day because she did debuted a great show that she does with the Knicks with her and my boy Hector from Uptown Sports. And
Uh huh.
I know her as Skills, right? But
Yeah.
he's calling her Carla by her name. And when I talk to Patty calls her Carla. And I'm like, sometimes I got to think, who the hell is Carla? I already got to know her as Skills. Like, so I'm like, yo, Skills, I hope you don't mind, but this is what I'm going to call you. That's what I got to know you. So for you, yeah, I'm going to call you J Mac if you don't mind. But who is J Mac? Tell us, who's J Mac?
Um, I am a lifelong Mets fan. Um, I'm an artist by trade. I wouldn't say I'm an artist by accident. I grew up as an artist, and I took some classes on how to paint, how to draw, and do those things. But like most artists, they have smart and responsible parents who try to get them to think about ways that they're going to be able to support themselves in their life. And my parents were my dad especially was very big on hard work and providing for your family and doing the things that you need to. So I at a young age, I put down the pen and the ink and the paintbrush to support myself at first, and then after supporting myself, it became supporting my first wife and child, and throughout life, I worked a lot of retail jobs. I was a store manager and district manager for years for Blockbuster Video, and then Old Navy, and then um, as I was working about 15 years into my retail career, I realized that something was missing in my life, and I think a big part of what made me happy and um, what gave me life was the things that inspired me, and it was sports and comic books and Knicks fan, Mets fan, Rangers fan. Um, and a lot of pop culture, movies and film. Because the time I spent working at Blockbuster was probably one of the greatest times of my life, because I was surrounded by movies and creativity all the time. And when you're on the side of sales and selling that and customer service, you're not really doing much creatively. So when I was working for Old Navy, I had a chance to use some of that creativity in the way that I was able to drive sales and run my business, but it still wasn't the same as actually creating something that, makes people smile. And, you know, to me, it wasn't enough to make lines move fast or to make the company I worked for money. I wasn't fulfilled. So my my passion to draw, my passion to paint, my passion to create was challenged at somewhere in like my mid to late 30s. I'm 48 right now, so somewhere about like 35, 36, I started feeling like this itch that I need to do something different with my life. I need to create more. And I started drawing comics for my son, and I was drawing a lot of Batman, Spider-Man, um, things of that nature. And that became then um, me me then drawing wrestling characters that he liked from the WWE. And it just became a lot of that. And then I took a job in California. My first marriage didn't work out, and when I was out in California, was married to someone, and she and I out there, I was very, very torn, because I was living in New York, but then I moved to California, so my kid was here. So I'm traveling back and forth to New York. Art is the only way that I could really communicate with my son, because he's really, inspired by what I do and what I make. And it was the only way to really kind of like fulfill a time that was kind of painful for me, because I felt like such an asshole, like going to take on this job and move away from my kid to hopefully better my life, and then move back to New York. And about I was out there for about 2.5 years, and it was probably the a step back in my life, but a step forward in where I was going to be, you know, 10, 15 years from them. I didn't know that that step was going to help me um, really find my way into art. Because when I lived in Fresno, California, I met a lot of people who were creative, graffiti artists, people who were into art shows and tattooing, and I studied and worked with a lot of them to build and to create. And it really helped me kind of decide what type of art I want to create. So I started customizing sneakers, I started painting on canvas, and I really got into the feel of like, you know, creating, urban art. So art that's raw, art that comes from emotion, art that comes from a place of things that feed, your inner child. It could be sports, it could be sneakers, it could be hip hop. And those are all the things that are my inspiration: sports, sneakers, and hip hop. So I was doing shows out in California. I moved out there in late 2014, early 2017. We moved back to New York, and we moved back to New York. I find a couple of art workshops. I'm drawing naked subjects that are doing, it's a lot of figure drawing, like using charcoals and pencils. And then I got invited to a couple of art shows, which at the time I felt really grateful for. But at the same time, like I was paying to show my art. So as grateful as I was also paying somebody to show my art. So I didn't know if I was getting taken advantage of or not because I was very just anxious to show the things that I was creating. And while I'm doing this, my second marriage falls apart.
Hmm.
I'm working for Adidas, and I'm working Adidas as my full time job, and I'm doing this part time, and then life just kind of crashed on me. I went into a deep funk, to a deep depression, and I didn't know whether I was coming or going. I This was late 2017, early 2018. I took a leave of absence from my job. I started getting my mind right, getting healthy. Speaking to a therapist about what the pain is like of going through a second divorce, and the taking the opportunity to pursue this job as well as this relationship out in California. I felt really troubled by all this in my life, to be honest. And I'm sharing a lot because a lot of these things are a part of who I am and what I'm about. And, after a lot of intense conversations and understanding why I made some of the decisions that I did, I really had to face the fact that I wasn't going to be long for continuing to work for someone else. So about a month later, I accepted my next job, which was my last job, which was something completely different for me. Um, I got a job working for Manhattan Mini Storage, and I was a high volume store manager for one of their locations on the west side. And as I was there working through it, we start going through the pandemic. And during the pandemic, business isn't so busy, but you're busy. So I'm creating more. I'm making things that I'm really inspired by. Like how it was during the pandemic. If you had to be outside to go to work, you were lucky. A lot of people were staying indoors. A lot of people
Right.
were afraid to be outside. But there was a lot of creativity that came out of the pandemic, and I was painting about 3 or 4 pairs of sneakers for clients a month, that people who found me on Instagram, and I was doing that. Um, and then a friend of mine who's into Wu Tang, I made him a Wu Tang cutout that had all the lyrics to Shimmy Shimmy Ya on it, and then a sneaker came out that I was really inspired about, that my friend was able to get me from a shop that he worked at, and I went to give him money, and he wouldn't take money from me. So he's like, "You're an artist. Make me a badass piece of art that I can have in my house." I made him a Yankee symbol that had a subway map on it. It went viral on my Instagram page. I had 40 orders in the first month for something like that. It was a Yankees piece, it was a Mets piece. There was people from St. Louis contacting me to make a Cardinals piece that had like either a St. Louis map on it. I had somebody ask me to make the state map of California. Mind you, I have only one tool. I have a jigsaw. I'm cutting this stuff in my, outside of my girlfriend's place, the woman who's now my wife. 6 years later, um, I'm cutting all of this, all of this, all this wood out by hand, and I'm busy as hell. I have an apartment in Spanish Harlem. I'm cutting with, I'm cutting with a rotary tool now to try to speed up the process. The fire alarms went off in my building. I get a phone call from my boss. Dude, what's going on with you? What's happening in the building right now? I said, I was cutting pieces for clients. He's like, what do you mean? Like, you're basically violating the terms and agreement of your employment. So I need you to stop. Um, I'm going to give you a pass because I know you're talented and creative, but you need to stop. So my wife, who's my girlfriend at the time, finds me a place where I can learn how to use a CNC, and 40 pieces became, I don't know, something like two to 3,000 pieces over the past 5 years that no, not 5 years, uh, uh, 3.5 years that I've sold to clients, and I've made things for players such as Aaron Judge and Travis Darno and um, DeMarcus Ware, and I've done some really crazy jobs for installations. Like I did an installation in Times Square for the Cake Boss, and a lot of what I've made has come from just my passion to try to continue to get better at what I do and continue to try to utilize sports and hip hop and sneakers. I made stuff for several rappers in the New York area, and I don't want to name drop, but like cool stuff that's been a part of like videos and stuff that I never thought would have been possible had I not believed in myself enough to walk away from the type of work that I was good at doing. So that's like my biography for my work and my life. I've been married 3 times. The third time is the charm. I've got a
Listen,
I've got a great woman who absolutely believes in me 100% for the type of stuff that I'm doing, and um, this OMG phenomenon that took place. Um, it could have happened at a better time in our life. I mean, business owners, small businesses, we go through ups and downs. And this past year, I was having some downs. In the month of June, we just came back from London, and business was tough. I made a bunch of pieces of art that I brought to London with me that I dropped throughout the city. Got a lot of love out in London and Trafalgar Square inside of the stadium from Mets and Philly fans alike. And I don't know, like I was ready to pack it up and go back to doing the same type of work that I was doing. But my buddy Lowe's Vintage Mets over on Instagram was like, dude, you gotta keep with it, man. Don't give up your dream. Like maybe you do it on the side, but don't stop doing what you're doing. Um, then we knew that the song OMG was coming out, and I told him like I want to make something around this, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do yet until I saw the T-shirt that Jose and Alex were wearing
right, right.
the week of the song release, which was 2 days before. So that was on a Wednesday. That's June
No,
22nd.
and you're getting a little bit ahead of me there because I kind
I
of
don't
want
know
to.
because I keep telling stories. Like you could tell.
No, no, and it's great. It's great, bro. It's great because it's an inspiration to other people, right? I hope my cousin is watching this who dabbles in art, who's very talented, right? Listen, Jay, I'm horrible with this stuff. So, like, he draws stuff. I don't know exactly what it is or whatever, but he's great. Like, he sells pieces, especially during the holidays, out through Instagram, stuff like that. But he has a family, he has a job, and sometimes scared to, dedicate all his time there, whatever. And I don't want to put his business out there, but not only him, many people, even myself, I'm listening to you and I'm being inspired. So thank you because it's an inspiration and it shows that if you stick to something, it may seem like it's going nowhere, but you never know where that break is coming from. And especially if it's something that you love, right? Because you're doing this out of love. It's not like you said, making money for anybody else or anything like that. And most of it, a lot of it also is not just about making money. Obviously, we all need to make money to make a living, but you're doing it because you love and you want to make other people happy with the work that you're creating. And I'm learning about you. Because I'll be honest, I'm ignorant to a lot of things, right? I love the New York Mets. A lot of stuff I ignore, and there were a lot of things that went on this season. This season didn't start out as a great season before we got to OMG, right? It was 0-5 to OMG, like Gary Cohen said. Shout out to Gary Cohen. But so like I wanted to ask you, right? Because me as a fan, before we get to the OMG, as a year was going on, and then I'm going to the ballpark, and again, before I get to that though, I didn't know who J Mac was. That's why I was like, the first thing I'm gonna ask him, who is J Mac, right? Because when we do get to OMG, I see this guy after seeing the Rally Pimp, Seymour Wiener, and I forget the order of everything. But it seems like the Mets, there's always a gimmick. There's always somebody trying to maybe come up off the Mets or get some popularity off the Mets. And I guess people could say that off of me and then all the other content creators out here, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, who's this guy popping up now with a sign? OMG, here we go. Somebody else trying to tag along to the Mets. But now here I know. I didn't know you were here creating pieces for all these other teams, creating pieces for Aaron Judge before all of this, and that you're a lifelong Met fan who has season tickets, obviously, who traveled out to London to watch the team. So all of that stuff is good to know. But let me ask you before we get to the OMG, as someone who goes to all these games, right? I was a little disappointed early on in the season with the atmosphere in the ballpark. And I kind of understood why, because we came into the season and it was, a bridge year and all of that. And I don't want to get into all that nonsense, but we know the expectations were pretty low.
Yeah.
So fans were like, you know what? You're not going to invest in the team. I'm not going to invest in you. I'm not going to waste my hard-earned money going to the ballpark. And even the fans that were at the ballpark were like, I'm here because I'm here. Maybe some because they have season tickets and not going to give them up. So we're still going to go to the ball game. Maybe somebody got free tickets. Maybe somebody else said, I'm going to go to a game. But I didn't feel like people were into the games, into the teams. And I would be frustrated at these games. Like, let's go, man. Let's cheer this team on. What was your feeling early on in the season, like as far as like the ballpark atmosphere?
I mean, listen, it starts on opening day, right? Like, you never want to start. You never want to start the season off with an L, and obviously, that kind of like set the tone. Losing game one, and then game one turned into a whole series, turned into, being down 0-5, and obviously we were lucky to win games the sixth game. Otherwise, we would have been 0-6 to OMG. Which actually the
Right.
six and the six looks a lot like the letter G, so I'm glad we didn't. But anyway, um, in, uh, in 0-5 to OMG sounds a lot better, Gary. But
Right.
seriously, I mean, like, people were ready to fire Carlos Mendoza from the start. It was the whole, we hired a Yankee manager, we got another guy who's a yes man. He's getting his decisions from up above, and maybe we should have gone harder to get Craig Counsell, and all of that. I mean, there's a lot of that stuff, and again, a lot of people were were not happy, and it also, I think the start of the season's always tough because the weather stinks, man. The weather's just, it's
Yeah.
always so cold in April. So I think people are just never really happy to be at the ballpark in April. I think there's the excitement about opening day, but it wears off really quick when you have some cold rain and you got a doubleheader and nobody's in the park. So that's an
Right.
easy
Except for
way to give.
lunatics like me.
It's an easy way to give. You got no hair on your head. You got to bundle up. Like you got, you have it. It's an easy way to give up home field advantage, and lose, the ballpark. But again, we're looking at a team that we knew that the expectations were going to be very low going into the season. Making the playoffs was a victory for the team, and what our sights were early on. Like David Stern said, we were going to, he expected a team that was going to be competitive, and it was going to be with the guys in some of these, ancillary decisions that were made to add to the team. The Sean Manayas, the Luis Severinos, the Adrian Hauser at the time, which, he thought was a great decision. Obviously, one of the best decisions he made was getting, Tyrone Taylor on our team. Um,
Right.
there's, those decisions were not very popular. They weren't the
At
blatant
all.
hell. They weren't the, obviously, being left at the altar by Yamamoto and Otani left a bad taste in our mouth. It's like, what are we? Are we gonna ever be able to spend this fortune that Cohen has on free agents? And it wasn't that we didn't make the offers. It's just that we weren't able to acquire them, because when you're looking at a team as a free agent, you want to go to a team that has high prospects of winning. And we didn't show that in 2023. And
Right.
changing a manager, we were going into the season with someone new. So that not only is the prospectus around baseball, but smart fans, which New York fans are, decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to hold on to my money. And then those fans eventually started showing up as the season, went on. I think we started to see them in July and August and into September, but it took a while to get it going. And if the team didn't turn it around in June, the ballpark would have been a tomb all summer.
Oh no, yeah, it was getting ugly, and I'll be honest with you. Like I said, I was disappointed a lot early on in the season. But like you said, those are tough games to go to, and when the team starts the way that it does, I think I may be at 3 of the first 5 games. I was definitely at opening day. No. What was it this year that I got sick? I can't even remember. But I was at about 3 of those games. I think for one or maybe the doubleheader, I was in the Hyundai Club. Shout out to Lisa for that. Um, Lisa had treated me to the Hyundai Club for a couple of those games. I think it was, yeah, I think it might have been the doubleheader. I think it was, yeah, because I think it was miserable that day, and lucky for us, we had the indoor, right? But yeah, it was rough, and it got to a point like you made when I was like, I don't even want to go to these stupid games, and I love this team. I love nothing more than going to the stadium, and I was going in there, maybe without the right attitude, but once I get in the park, I just can't help it, and I'm like, let's go, let's do this. And I would try to get people riled up, and all people want to talk about is, oh, who we're gonna trade, and should we get rid of Peter Alonso, and yeah, let these guys work up their trade value and this and that. I remember, I forget. We'll get into some of that later, but I've been lucky to be caught by the TV cameras and stuff a couple of times. And at one point, they called me one time in the stands. They're talking I wasn't even talking. I was like off to the side, and one of my teammates from the baseball league was there talking to one of the ushers and all that. And I moved away because the conversation was, oh yeah, trading Peter Alonso. You think we're gonna trade Peter Alonso? And I'm like, I'm tired of talking about this crap. I want to win games. I want to turn the season around. I want to make this, like you said earlier, a place that people want to come to because we're playing good, because we're an attraction and all of that. And it looks like we may be there. But let's get to it. As you know, like I said, I don't want to take too much of your time. You're on the road. Thank you for pulling over, but
I don't want you. I have time. My time. I'm here. So
I don't want your wife sending out no APBs though, looking to see where you at.
She knows I'll be home. I'm a couple of.
She knows you were long-winded blunt thoughts, and she knows you with that long-winded heck.
Dude, I think I'm more long-winded than you. I think I gave like my entire autobiography in the opening monologue, and I'm sure people like this guy can't get out of his own way. No, listen,
good, man. You good.
Back to that, like we're all human beings. Like we're gonna make mistakes in life, and whether that's relationships, whether that's jobs, familial decisions, all that stuff. Like, it's part of who we are.
No, for sure. The important part is to learn from it, right, and not keep making the same mistakes and make progress. But tell us, how did OMG decide? Which I have I always say I apologize, and you said no. I'm behind that. You're gonna have the foam finger type, and then
I'm gonna send you a Christmas ornament.
Celebrate Christmas. You're gonna be at the QBC, right? I'm hoping to be there. So
yeah, I'll be there.
We can talk about that, and I actually want to talk to you about maybe working on a blunt thoughts something. That we can work on it.
All about it.
Yes, sir. So, but tell us, how did OMG sign become a thing? What was the birth of the OMG sign?
Yeah, so the week before the OMG sign came out, it was the week of OMG? We had the first games of the Subway Series.
I forget. I'm horrible
at these
things. All these things they blend together for me.
So coming out of London, I came home and I had a bunch of commissions that I had to handle. Being at London for like the 5 or 6 days that we were out there, like I was not looking at my phone. I wasn't doing any business. I think I turned down the opportunity to probably take on about 5 or 6 more jobs during that time that would have been good paying gigs, but it was all London and the Mets. And at the time, like I was like, what the hell are we going there for? And this is crazy. And being out there and the first game, it was like we didn't belong on the field with the Phillies. The place was so loud. and the Philadelphia fans were outnumbering Mets fans probably like 70-30%. It was so stupid. It was crazy. But I'm in a Discord. I'm in this Discord on Instagram that Vintage Mets runs called Metsiverse, and basically it's a chat room for Mets fans to go in and talk about the team and talk about what's going on. And we all knew around the time at the end of May when some accountability decisions were being made that Jose Iglesias was going to come up, that we were going to give Jeff McNeil a little bit of a break because he was slumping big time. And him coming up and us getting rid of Jorge Lopez at that time by DFAing him and making some other decisions. The team started to they got together. Francisco Lindor and JD Martinez ran that meeting and looked like the team started to really hold each other accountable in the locker room. They start going on a run that we weren't even sure was a run yet.
Right.
London, we lose the first game. It was horrible. The next game, that day is my birthday. I'm like, I don't even know that I want to go to the stadium. Like, I don't want to spend my birthday like this. But we go to the stadium because that's what we do. We show up.
Right.
And my seats were behind the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen.
Oh gosh.
Like so much so, like I was in a Philadelphia Phillies section, and if anyone's who knows that's gone to London, you could buy tickets where other fans are. I was so anxious to buy the tickets and I had no idea where the heck I was sitting. I just wanted to be in the building. So I chose the section that was with Philadelphia Phillies fans. And I know how loud you are, but I've got a booming voice in the stadium. If you've ever been with me at the stadium, I will root till I have no voice. And I did that in a section full of Phillies fans. And it was respectful because when you're on foreign soil, you can't get beat up, because if you get beat up, people are losing their ability to go back home.
Yeah, you say nobody's trying to get deported.
Right. Right. So I'm not trying to be locked up in a London jail cell. So I'm keeping everything that I'm doing respectful. I'm being loud. I'm rooting against the Phillies. I'm saying, let's go Mets. I did that all of game one. I went to game two with no voice, but I found it. I had tea that day, and it's my birthday. We're riding high. We come back, and then we have this improbable double play to end the game. And I'm like, yo, that was something. Then we come back and we lose to the Marlins, and then Grimace is born. And then we go on this 7-game winning streak. Then we play the Cubs, and Edwin Diaz comes out, and before he comes out, there's an interview. They're interviewing Francisco Alvarez on ESPN. Eduardo Perez is interviewing him and asking him, so what's been the key to the turnaround? We know that the turnaround also was a number of things. It was the team holding each other accountable. It was the locker room conversation. It was Jose Iglesias coming up. It was Francisco Alvarez coming off the injured list. We knew what his record was when he came back. But then he was put on the spot and asked, what's been the difference? Has it been this song, OMG, or has it been the Grimace? And he said OMG. And how he said it, I was like, yo, like, I need to make a sign based on that. Like, I love Alvy. Like, he had a rough year this year, but I think a lot of that is due to his injury. But he's a special talent. Everyone loves him. Fans, we all ride or die with our guys, and he's the guy that I think is going to be with us for a long time and have a lot to say, on this team. So I'm like, that's the sign I'm going to make. And then later in that week, I see the T-shirt on Alex and the rest of the team. It's just like black shirt that has like a neon green and like neon blue OMG like font. And I'm like, I'm going to base it off that. So I took that picture and I rendered it and I made it so that way it could cut through my machine. The morning of the song's release, I cut it. I started cutting it at about 7:30 in the morning. I was done painting it and putting it together by about noon. I not only made a blue and orange version with the team colors, I made a version that had Grimace hair on it. So there's this purpley Grimace haired version with a neon background that
Right.
I wound up taking with us to to Pittsburgh when we delivered the second sign, because the night that the sign was delivered and given to the team, through a random meeting with Alex Cohen. I had no idea that she was going to be at the K corner and I was going to run into her. I happened to run into her there with these signs, and I'm taking a selfie with Mr. and Mrs. Madden. I hear her behind me saying how beautiful she thinks the signs are. And Alex and I follow each other on Instagram. We've messaged each other. I gave her a couple of pieces that I've made over the years. I gave her one in 2022, and then in July of 2023, I gave her two pieces, and she knew me. She knew who I was, and she's like, "What are you doing with these signs?" I'm like, "I want to bring them into the stadium, but I also want to give one to the team. Can you help me?" She said, "I'd love
Wait,
to."
this was in Pittsburgh or back here
This
in New
was
York?
this was in New York. This was in
This
the
was
K
back in New
Corner
York.
the night it happened, right? The night that the song was released. And
Okay.
she's like, "Yeah, as long as you sign it, I want them to know that it's coming from a fan." So we all know what happened that night. Tyrone Taylor, Pete Alonso, and Jeff McNeil hit home runs.
Right.
Jeff was born that night.
Right.
Uh, became part of the home run celebration that night. Fireworks display and him performing with it on the field. Um, I had
I'm
no
sorry, what was that feeling like when you saw them put that sign up? Like, what was that like? Like,
the
holy
first
smokes.
the first thing that I got a message from James Edward 1931 on Twitter.
Well, because
Um,
you're probably at the stadium. That's right. You're at the stadium, so you're not
I'm at
even,
the, I'm at
you
the
can't even
stadium.
see
He's
them.
watching at home on Apple TV.
Right, right,
He's
right.
like he's like, "Bro, you got your sign. I think that's your sign in the dugout." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, I think that's your sign in the dugout." He sends me a picture of it. I was like, Starling Marte is just leaning against it like this, like just stunting. I'm like, "What? This is crazy." Then Tyrone Taylor in the bottom of the fourth hits a home run. Then he's like, "Yo, they took a picture with him. He was just on the Apple broadcast. They were taking a picture with him with the OMG sign in the dugout." And then my phone's blowing up. 10 text messages turn into 30 text messages. There's an endless amount of new messages on Instagram. All of a sudden, I have Twitter followers. I literally had about 80 Twitter followers before that night. That night, I got like 500 Twitter followers because
Wow.
someone said, "Who made this sign?" And Darren from the Seven Line said, "It's our guy, J Mac Customs." And they thought I was like a member of the Seven Line, and I love the Seven Line, but like I'm not a season ticket holder of the Seven Line. I like to go there because they have a good party. Like they have a really good party, and they invite everybody to have a good time, and it's always good to have free beers before the game. So where they tailgate, and they're undefeated at tailgating, but they have a good time. So it was so cool that like I got that shout out because now people are finding me. I had a message later that night from before I get to later that night, I'm looking through all these messages, and I'm sorry I'm all over the place. I'm just
No, no, you
we're,
good, man. And this is what Blood Thoughts is. I'm all over the place,
I'm
brother.
excited to tell
This
this
is the
story.
perfect place to be all over the place. I always tell people this is the most bootleg show you're gonna find. It ain't no much all of the bells and whistles, but they seem to like it. We got people in here. Shout out to you guys. It gives us a chance to shout the people out. I appreciate you guys. I'm gonna try to get to the comments. We know you're there. We love you. But I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. I'm loving all of this, man. Like I said, I didn't know who J Mac was. And the hater in me is like, who the hell is this guy? Trying to live off my match, And I got
Oh
a
my
couple of
god!
friends like, what do you think about this OMG sign guy? I'm like, whatever with this guy. But then the more I get to learn, I see you pop up on Twitter and this. I'm like, okay. Then shout out to my guy Rube. Rube, you still my guy, Rube. You still my guy, Rube. You still my guy. You know what I'm saying? He found out that he knew you. Oh, and my guy Quasi, Queasy. I thought it was Queasy. I think it's Quasi. He was like, "Yo, that's my boy
Oh,
J Mac."
Quezi, yeah, Quezi actually came to a resin class that I had hosted. Quezi is a really great skateboarder, and he came to a resin class that I hosted, and he wanted a picture of him like doing an ollie over a rolled garbage can. And the picture of where he took it, I was like, yo, that's the Forest Park Band Shell. He's like, how do you know that place? I was like, that's my old neighborhood, bro. And it was just such a weird connection. And we rocked out on a piece in my studio for about a good portion of the day. And he has this really like dope mustard and ketchup kind of colored skateboard deck of him, like a silhouette of him doing it. So yeah, Quezzy's a good dude. I
Look at
love
that.
that
I
big,
didn't
I love
even
the
know
big hat
that.
that he wears. What's that?
I
Yeah,
didn't.
man.
Yeah, the hat. I love the hat.
Yeah,
I didn't even know that. He's a great dude. Like you said, I met him at the ballpark one day. We're by
yeah.
the phone charging section, and we've been boys ever since, like 2 years ago. And now we meet up at the ballpark.
I love it.
Shout out to him. He treated me to a bunch of games. And people love me for some reason. I went to so many games for free, and we're gonna get into the thankful
Same.
things. But one thing that I'm thankful for this year is you people, man, that treated me to so many games and stuff like that. And yeah, but I didn't know that. I didn't know he was a great skateboarder. Look at that. Look at that. I'm telling you, man, you're educating me.
It's
But
the
shout out to
one thing
Quincy. He's
about
probably
this.
watching.
It's the one thing about this community that I really appreciate is that, I think real fans recognize the real fans, and there's a lot of people who come to the ballpark who are lifers, who have been through this, who've been through the pain, who have been through all the struggle of what it is to be a Mets fan, and not people who are so-called realists that find every single way to shit on the team. Like I'm not about that. Like it's about what's on the front of the jersey that I'm inspired with. Players will always come and go.
Yep.
And you know what? They're performers. They're human beings. They have bad days. They go through slumps. And, you know, I think the old way of just, booing a team, like that doesn't work. That doesn't work in this day and age. That doesn't work with, the men of today, like, the men growing up today. Like you and I might be able to handle that. Even still, I don't know. But 25, 30-year-old players, they're not the players of 15, 20 years ago that would just sit there and take it. Like
Yep.
we've already seen like the negative side of what it's like when you boo fans. I mean, Philadelphia turned around and they had to have a whole standing ovation just to turn around Trey Turner and stuff like that. And listen, I don't subscribe or necessarily agree that you have to go to those lengths, but I think you get a lot more by being positive and being uplifting towards the players that you root for rather than constantly booing and crapping on them. But
No, for sure. And
not
I sometimes, I guess I'm perceived as someone who's always looking to be negative and pessimistic and stuff like that. But I actually like to think that I keep it real, and sometimes I am critical. Like you mentioned that London trip and all that. Man, I was losing it at that point. Like I remember going up, we used to do the round table, and I went on a rant talking about if we were trying to showcase the game and the Mets were trying to showcase themselves, how the hell you have two guys like Quintana and Manaya start back to back? Because they were terrible and they weren't doing good at that time. And then I get lucky enough to meet Sean Manaya. So
yeah,
embarrassing.
I saw
I
that.
get
That was
lucky enough
wild.
to meet Sean Manaya, have a catch with him, and
Yeah.
now I love Sean Manaya and I want to have him back. But to try to move it along here on the heels of the OMG sign, and well, I don't know if you want to add anything to the birth of the OMG sign, but I think
Yeah,
you
no,
pretty much.
it just that night you were asking about like how it felt, and I went to the game with no ticket. I was sitting out in the Shea Bridge where I kick it a lot of times, at games. I I'm not a season ticket holder anymore. I was a season ticket holder for the first 6 years of the stadium, and I had to sell my tickets, and with kind of the transitions with my work and also how my work is now. I get tickets as I go. Like if I have the ability to go to games, I'm gonna buy a bunch of tickets and I'll go for a week straight, and then I'll go back, later that month. But I'm always listening, I'm always watching, I'm always looking at, what happens from game to game. But nothing takes place. Nothing's better than actually being in the ballpark. You remember games better. I always feel that way. Like different innings, different moments, different dates. Like I feel like I know that the day that we won that game against Houston, the night of OMG, that we won 7-2 that night. There were 12 hits in that game. There were 2 home runs that happened in the 6th inning between Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil, guys who were scuffling, and OMG kind of was lifted in the dugout, and Jeff's a happy guy now, and as the game started wearing on, like as we're getting toward the 7th and 8th inning, Justin Manning and I follow each other on Instagram. He saw me. He's like, dude, that's your sign. I was like, yo, man, I got to get down there. I got to get down there and see this. He's like, follow me. He brought me down by the dugout that in the top of the 8th. I was trying to go down there. I'm like, they have my sign in the dugout. I'm showing them the Grimace sign. They're like, I don't give it. The usher's like, I don't care what that is. I don't know who you are. And now I know the usher by name. And
right.
And Justin brought me down there, and that when the game concluded and the fireworks before the fireworks start happening, they're setting up for a concert that we had no idea that was going to happen, and then the teammates rush Jose Iglesias with the OMG sign, and I'm like, yo, tears are streaming down my eyes at this point. And I'm gonna be honest, like I cried in the ballpark. I cried at that game. Like I was crying. I was weeping like uncontrollably that whole night. Like messages on Twitter that night, and before as the fireworks were happening, Jose came over to the dugout because somebody had told him that it was me that made it, and like that was the first time that we had any type of contact, and like there was this like nonverbal kind of like bro, like I really appreciate you making that kind of thing. And it was just it just became this thing, right? It for about a week straight they're hitting a lot of bombs. They didn't win the next 2 games against Houston because Houston's a tough team,
right? And that's when again everybody thought the season was over, but yeah
everyone's like
after that great month winning, I forget how many series in a row, they lose that series to Houston, and it was like, oh, that's it, back to earth. OMG's over. Grimace this, Grimace that.
And it's the end of the month, right? It's like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? And then we split with Washington, and on that Wednesday game, the Wednesday, July 3rd, I'm in the Brooklyn Cyclone Stadium giving them an OMG sign because they wanted one for their team. I bring one to them, and the sign didn't even make it into the building. I'm walking through the corridor of the building, and I'm holding this OMG sign that I made, which is a different font, by the way. It's very similar to the one that's the city style one that I have. So I'm making my way through this I guess this kind of like lobby area that has like all of this really cool memorabilia. Mets players that have gone through Brooklyn. They do it. It's really well done in there. It's like a VIP entrance, I believe, and media entrance. I dropped the sign. The sign snaps in half.
Jeez.
So we make a mad dash to try to fix it. We fix it. You wouldn't have known the sign broke. Then, as the game wears on, I start getting messages on Twitter. Dude, what happened to this sign that you made? It broke. The O popped off. And there's a picture of the O taped around it. And I'm like, holy crap, I need to make a new sign. So I made that on July 5th and then coated it with resin this time. That's why it's so shiny and that's why it's durable. I hit up Ruben and I told him I was going up. And he's like, I'll take the ride. Do you have room for another person? I said, if you're driving, you could bring as many people as you like. So it was me, Ruben, and Jay Fern.
Yeah, shout out to Ruben, Jay Fern.
That went up to Pittsburgh, and they live in the town right next door for me over here in Jersey. And we left at 4:30 in the morning, and got on the road, got up to Pittsburgh by 11, delivered the sign to Jose. In the tunnel, they brought us onto the field, so we took a bunch of pictures during batting practice, and we came back and won that game. We had the lead. Edwin Diaz blew the save, but came back and decided, and Mendy threw him back out there to clean up his mess, which he did. But Francisco Lindor came through after he blew the save with a single to give us the lead. That's the same way that we won when we clinched against Atlanta, but this time instead of a single, Francisco Lindor hit that home run in Atlanta.
Right.
After he gave up those runs that he gave up, it's just so wild, like the occurrences and how things took place.
No, for sure, for
So
sure.
so
But
many
no,
occurrences, man.
no, it's great, man. And it's funny. Let's look. Like I said, I thought you were season ticket holder, but you're like in the same boat as me, but for different reasons. Where I don't have my season tickets anymore, but I find myself at the ballpark probably more now or just as much. When I had the ticket, and I didn't have the full season. I had 40 games. Let's just say I had 40 games, not
Yeah,
41, 40, but I had 40 games.
yeah,
And I would still end up at 60, 70 games a year. And now because, I do the Uber thing, I'm on the road, depending on how the day is going, look it up on the secondary market, and it kind of works out better that way. Although there are benefits that I miss out of being a season ticket holder. Um,
absolutely.
but now let me ask you this: as we get into a little bit, and we're not gonna do too much, as I don't know if you saw the comment, and I was thinking the same thing,
Is that
George.
from George? George, that's a great comment.
I was
Thanks
thinking
for
the same thing. We'll do something different here, but of course, we will have to a little bit eventually. But I think this is, what is it called? A fresh breath of fresh air for everybody, just to have a little bit of a different conversation. But we have to touch on a little bit, just a bit like the whole OMG thing, and even before we get into Iglesias himself, do you think it is something that'll carry over into next season, or
it
you
will
do you think
because
it's
it will because of this.
so hot? OMG.
I got it ready for the signing, and if you're thinking about ripping it off, it's already been copywritten. So there you have
Oh
it.
my gosh,
Let's
that's
go.
amazing! Is that the first time you show that?
The
I
first
feel
time I've
privileged.
shown it, and it's here. But it's also it's already been sent in for copyright. So if anyone bites it, I'm coming
Oh
after
my
you hot and
gosh.
heavy.
Well, I appreciate you for trusting me, and for blessing me and showing it on here. But yeah, so I guess you think it can carry over. But how about like OMG, how it was in 2024? And obviously, I think the first thing you say, well, it depends if Iglesias comes back. So
Yeah.
let's say that Iglesias comes back. Does OMG come back with him in the same way
Listen,
that it was in 24?
I think it can. I think that one thing about our fan base is that we're into nostalgia. I mean, we're still this we still have songs that are played from the '80s on our sound systems. I mean, you still hear Miami Sound Machine being played.
Mhm.
Shout out to Gloria Stefan. Man, she did her thing for years. Man, she had hit after hit during the '80s, but we're still playing that. We still hang on to some things like that. You Gotta Believe happened in 1973. We're still talking about You Gotta Believe,
Right.
right? We're still called the Miracle Mets, the Amazing Mets. You have it. So I think that there is something about OMG that this team who was big about coming back. OMG was a part of that. If it comes back or not, I mean, time's gonna tell. It's gonna be based on whether or not I think that whether or not Jose's here. And listen, from all indications, it sounds like he wants to be back. Um, but it's really going to be about whether or not there's a space for him. I definitely think a veteran presence in a lineup in the clubhouse is important. I think vibes are important. We're losing a lot of players. In this, there's a lot of players that are leaving this clubhouse. JD Martinez, potentially, Jose Iglesias, potentially Pete Alonso. There's going to be a lot of new. There's going to be a lot of new faces. Who's the glue? I mean,
Right.
you've got Lindor, you've got Alvarez, you've got McNeil, you've got Marte, but what is the vibe? Like, how do you keep the culture from last year continuing this year, building upon that? And I really feel like the culture shifted when Iglesias came onto the scene. He was a
Absolutely.
positive influence in the clubhouse. He was a positive influence on the field with his performance. And even if he's not a full-time player, which probably doesn't have to be, he could be a mentor to Luis Angel Acuna. He could be a mentor to Ronnie Mauricio if he comes up. He can continue to be there to mentor a Mark Vientos. So I think I think you've got to be careful with who you keep and who you lose. And I'd love him to stay, for my own personal selfishly reasons. But it's really all going to depend on who else is going to be in this clubhouse.
No, I agree. And for me, it's again, I think it all depends. I think OMG might be a 2024 thing, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. Doesn't mean that they don't play the song or anything like that. But I don't know if they'll bring out the sign again, and if that'll be the home run celebration again, because of the fact that there'll be a different dynamic in the clubhouse.
Yeah.
But if Jose is there, maybe it does continue just because he's there. He keeps bringing it up.
Yeah.
But you touched on something about the glue, right? And that's something that I always felt like this team lacked for a long time. And I'm not the only one, right? And I always kept saying this, and I always bring this as an example because we saw it be an issue. And when it was the whole McNeil and Lindor situation, right? And I always said, we know they've gotten past that as teammates, as co-workers, as whatever you want to call it, right? And there was probably a conversation and some apologies, maybe, honest, maybe not, maybe they felt like they were obligated to apologize. And I always said, who's making these guys laugh in the clubhouse? Who's making Jeff McNeil and Francisco Lindor laugh about anything in the clubhouse? Who's making them have a conversation that's not baseball, or maybe it is baseball, but a loose conversation that they don't have to have, right? I'm not sure if there was anybody in there. And we saw that when Jose Iglesias came along, he was obviously that guy. And that's what makes me lean towards whether OMG comes back or not, bringing Iglesias back. But I also do recognize we still have a Jeff McNeil. You know what I mean? And where's Jeff McNeil going to play? They consider him the second baseman. They've told us that this offseason so far. And obviously things can change, and maybe Jeff McNeil can be traded, and people get crazy about when you mention a trade for Jeff McNeil. Oh, you got to eat the money, and you got to this, and the value, and what are you going to get? But sometimes, you may have to eat a little bit of money. You may not see the value right away or whatever the case may be, or the value may be in subtracting him from the situation. Although I don't think he's as big of a problem as people think, in my opinion. But and then I also think, in my opinion, that Luis Angel Acuna should get a chance to maybe win the second base job. But again, sometimes I forget about it, Jeff McNeil. And if we do that, maybe you could bring in Iglesias and have him as the backup, as the veteran, as the caddy, I like to call it, as the influence. And in case he struggles on the field, he can step in and play, but can also be that leadership. So I definitely lean towards bringing him back. He was on WFAN last week, I think it was, did a great interview, talked about how much he wants to come back and wants to be part of helping guys like Francisco Lindor and Brandon Nimmo to win a World Series. He was high on that. I think that's important. He talked about how great the organization is, going back to what you said earlier, right? About this being a destination. He talked about the great ownership of the Coens. I think all of that is important. And I think as much as people feel like we can throw Steve Cohen's money around to be able to get players, right? I think you also need to be able to have guys that talk good about the organization, that say, no, this is a good place to be. This is some place that you're going to be treated right. And we have a good ball club. And we're trying to win. And the front office and the ownership will continue to do things to try to win. I think that's important.
No, I mean, we were at an event on Saturday. There was a signing, an autograph signing that he did over at the Woodbridge Brewery. Shout out to Woodbridge Brewery and Coaches Collectibles for putting that together. There were about 300 or so fans that came out to get various items signed, from OMG signs to bats, to balls, and what have you. And one of the biggest things that he just kept saying to people was that, I really want to be here, and the organization treated me very fairly, and gave me an opportunity not only on the field but also to kind of show, like, my flavor and share my story, because his story is very, is very inspiring, from thinking about how he got to America, and even like being out of baseball. Like, I think anybody could look to that and say, hey, you know what, this guy fought to keep himself in the major leagues, and even when he, the door kind of closed for a year, he didn't give up. He He didn't just walk away. He knew that he had some years of baseball left, and he knows there's probably not more than 2 or 3 more years left, and it seems that he wants to give those 2 or 3 years to this organization. So I think we're lucky if we can figure out a way to um, bring him back. Just even if it's to be that voice in the clubhouse that supports the captain.
Right.
He's not here to be the captain. We know who that is, but it's he's here to support it, and I think that would be huge. So time will tell.
For sure. And a couple of things you said there. One is the last thing you said is, and I always say this, the best player doesn't necessarily have to be the only leader or the leader.
Yeah.
Or that's not the only way to lead, right? Sometimes the best player just leads by example. And you have an enforcer, and you have whatever, the guy that's gonna keep everybody together, keep everybody loose. And that's what we have with Iglesias. And another thing you said that I hadn't really thought about is here we have a guy who has felt like he was done wrong. He said it a few times. He's felt like he was done wrong by the game of baseball. He has now found a place where he's felt like he was treated fairly. He is happy, and he has found guys that he wants to play with and be a part of trying to win with. So I think those are things that favor the Mets. And again, I heard it on the radio. You saw it in person, him talking about how much he wants to be here. So I think that he's a guy that would take a fair 2-year deal, whatever people want to say what fair is. You know what I'm saying? Because people get crazy with these things. Yeah, people get crazy with this stuff. It's always about the money. It's always about the money, Hector. It's always about I get it. I get it. As we're going to get ready to wrap it up here, Jay, and again, man, thank you so much for the time. I get nervous. I've been wanting to have you on, and finally being on with you and Keith and seeing you on gave me the guts to ask, because I like, who the hell wants to be on with me? You know what I'm saying? I'm not even consistent in doing this show, but finally I've gotten in. I've kind of fallen into Tuesday nights here in the off season, and that's what I'm kind of going with. So I'm glad you were able to do it during the holiday week, as you said. But we made it work. So I appreciate you. And thank you so much. But I gotta ask you a few things. Go ahead.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sure.
Where does Blunt Thoughts come from?
Where does Blunt Thoughts come from? Funny, right? Because everybody, and it's funny because I was shout out to my homegirl Jess, my homeboy Dennis. Dennis has a podcast, but Dennis had a podcast. He doesn't do it anymore. They were
bring it back. Bring it back.
Yeah, they were getting on me earlier. Because of like Blunt Thoughts, the weed, and this and this and that. And obviously, everybody knows I enjoy, my little recreational.
Okay.
Right? That's my business. But that's not what it's all about, right? What is that word? Double entendre, however the heck you say it. Yeah. From when I was a kid, Jay, one of my uncles, shout out to my Uncle Ray, rest in peace to my Uncle Ray. And then many people in my family used to always say, yo, dude, you are too direct. Yeah. You don't hold back. You say whatever's on your mind. You tell people whatever it is. You don't care.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, that's just what I am. I'm blunt, right? I just give my opinion. I don't mean any harm. Yeah. And I've tried to learn to kind of like, control a little bit. But it's about the way that I am. I come across very blunt, very aggressive, but so is that, and then of course a little play on the word, and but that's
I thought that might be what it is, but like I wasn't sure, and whether or not you partake or not, hey, it's all good. I wasn't sure, but I'm glad you answered that. I appreciate that.
No problem, man.
But very cool.
Thank you for asking. I wanted to ask you this because I ask a lot of people this, and I asked Keith. I had Keith on. Shout out to Keith, man. Had Keith on last week, and again we did like a little bit of a different show, right? Just talking about things, fandom. I like to hear from other fans. I want to see where you get your passion from, right? Yeah. But like we've talked about him a couple of times, and how he's the leader and should be the captain and all this, but it wasn't always like that, right? And I think, from the little bit that I see from you, and you said it earlier, you lean more towards being positive, right? I lean towards like, yo, I'm gonna feel about it the way I'm gonna feel about it,
Right.
depending on what you do, whether it be the team, the player, whatever. So I used to be critical of Lindor, and I will continue to be critical of Lindor, but not just Lindor. It's everybody.
Yep.
But for some reason, when I would get critical of Lindor, people would take it personal and stuff like that. But like, where are you on what we saw this year? What I feel was growth, and I think he admitted it that he grew. And part of it was because of the pressure that the fans put on him and the accountability that we ask for. Like, who the hell are we to ask for? Who the heck is Hector Blood Thoughts to ask for accountability? But sometimes as fans, we get big heads and we think we could demand things. But how did you see that? Did you think there was no growth? He was, it was more about us and not recognizing.
No, I think that, you know, we got Francisco Lindor in his age 26, 27 year. When he was traded here, when he came, it was in 2019 before we extended him, and gave him the massive contract that he's getting paid. It's a lot of money for a young guy coming to New York and playing in this environment. And we go back to when Carlos Beltran signed what was a mega deal at the time. He had a hard time adapting to the environment in his year one. But Francisco Lindor, he's a very proud player. He's very mindful. He's a very cerebral guy. I mean, the guy's he's a smart player. I think though that when he first got here, he wasn't sure how to kind of take command of this team, and I don't know that the way that the roster was set up, or even the dynamic of ownership and support from the manager and support from the general manager was all really there. You got a guy who you're paying to be a star, let him be a star. And if what comes with it is he's the outspoken leader of the team, he is. And I don't think he's the most outspoken, but he's the most available. He's one of the most available, I should say. He's always there at his locker, whether it's a win or a loss, deferring to his team, giving his team accolades, putting the onus on himself when he's having a bad game. And he showed that time and time again, throughout the course of this year. I definitely think, it's his, the ownership support of him. I think he's got, a tremendous support system with his family. I mean, his wife is obviously his biggest fan. If you guys, don't see some of the things that she posts on Instagram or Twitter, you're definitely missing out. I mean, she's definitely, ride or die for her man. And you need that, in your corner when you're going through these, sometimes tough times as an adult. And he's just, getting into a groove and being an adult. We're forgetting this guy's like 30, 31 years old,
Yeah.
making a ton of money, living in New York. When I was 31 years old, I was a couple of years into, marriage, owning a home for the first time, a career which I thought was going to be there forever. And, you're not baseball players forever. You're not guaranteed anything in life. There's financial decisions that come with making the type of money that you make. And just because you make more money doesn't necessarily mean you're a different person. You have the same family issues. You get up and put on your pants the same way as everybody else. You just make more money. And you're doing it in this environment where everybody is invested in your success. And when you're not successful, and that means you're not winning 90 games, you're not going to the playoffs, people start chirping. And there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And this year, he probably handled pressure the best he has since he's been here. And, I expect it to continue. But he's definitely matured, and he took a big step forward. I mean, I don't remember the last time we had a player that was number 2 in the MVP voting.
Right. No, listen.
The last time we had that.
Yeah. And I agree with you. I think it definitely will continue because I think he finally found himself. He finally found the way to lead this team. And again, it may not be, and I'm saying that he doesn't, by being the guy that is always bringing everybody together, but just that guy that leads by example, that just because of the way he does things, holds people accountable while also holding people accountable when need be. But he wasn't just comfortable with that because of what he came into, the dynamic that he came into. There was already kind of like a little leadership, whether we liked it or not, right? You had the McNeils, you had Pete Alonso, Brandon Nimmo, Michael Conforto at the time,
Yep.
the Grom and these guys. So there was still I disappeared. I guess that he felt like maybe he had to defer to or whatever. But I
Yeah.
think this year, with the growth he had last year, a little bit, we saw it under Buck. I think Buck Showalter was instrumental also in his growth. And then we already know about Mendoza. Mendoza is just great, and I think he
Yeah.
also helped. And then JD helped him out, and the whole Iglesias thing. But I just wanted to see how you felt about that because I think that was important. I think we needed that, and also for Brandon Nimmo. Also for Brandon Nimmo, for some reason, Brandon Nimmo seemed to finally come out of his show and be more of a vocal leader and take a little bit of a leadership role. And
Well, he's the
maybe he has to
longest
do
tenured Met, right?
right.
He's
Yes,
our
yes.
longest.
So
Yeah, he's done a
I
great
think
job.
that's why I think this year was so important, and it was great, and turned out to be so joyful because obviously the play on the field was good and the turnaround that they had and making the playoff, but just us seeing these guys grow in a way that we've been asking for them to grow. And I say this every time we talk about Lindor and the MVP run that he had. Listen, that was phenomenal. What he did was like Superman status. We
Yeah.
cannot expect him to do exactly that, but I
No.
think we can count on him now to be more consistent in those situations, which was mainly my beef. I think we may even see Francisco Lindor get off to a better start coming up in 2025, um, because of the growth that we've seen in him this year. And maybe not. Maybe that's something that he can never overcome. But I think also we also have, at least I speak for myself here, have learned to be a little bit more patient, maybe with that rough start. Um, this I don't want to get into too much. This I'm just gonna ask just how you feel about it as we get ready to wrap it up.
Sure.
Your gut feeling, Pete Alonso, Met, not a Met.
I mean,
And I know it depends. Maybe Soto, which I hate. I don't think it should depend on Soto. But what's your gut feeling?
well, the entire league is waiting on Soto right now. I mean, I think once Soto gets announced, then Scott Boras can get to his dozen or so other free agents that he has to find contracts for. Um, I think that Pete Alonso is going to have a tough decision to make. Whether it's to stay with the Mets and take a more team friendly deal than the money he might get elsewhere. So I think that it's gonna really come down to whether or not he's going to go into a situation that's as promising as here and money that's close to what he can get, and what he feels like he's valued. I think that turning down what he turned down last year reportedly, because we don't know exactly the numbers. I mean, if there's obviously reports of like 7 years, 168 or whatever it was, and whatever the number is, it doesn't even matter because he didn't sign it, so it's not real money.
Right.
Um, he turned down a contract and he bet on himself, and um, the playoff run that he had, and those really big home runs, and the good defense that he played throughout the course of the year, um, you know, may have kind of kept him kind of close to that number. But I don't think the Mets are going to offer that as a starting point. They're not going to go back and repeat that same number. But there's going to be a push from the Cubs. There's going to be a push from San Francisco, I bet. San Francisco, I'm sure, has been burnt too many times and doesn't want to miss out on somebody who can be and anchor in their lineup for 6 or 7 years, which they don't have that guy right now.
Right.
So those are like the two teams that scare me. But I think Pete would love to come back. But I think that I'm okay if he moves on. If he moves on, like I would be okay for it because he's making that choice. I don't think it's because the Mets aren't going to offer him something. It may just come down to if he can live with the type of contract that the Mets offer him, to be here and to be part of this team. But anybody who plays for this team, if Juan Soto's here, is going to be playing with a guy that could be getting a $600-700 million contract, and that's a tough contract to play next to. When you measure each other up and you measure, stats, and these guys are all about their stats.
Right.
Soto's going to get an incredible amount of money, and it's going to make it difficult to afford everybody, especially with
and that's what I meant when I said it's
fill.
When I said it's dependent on Soto. I didn't mean, obviously we know that everybody's waiting for Soto's decision so they can make theirs, but I'm also like, I'm hoping that it's not the case that because we signed Juan Soto that we now have to like be careful where we spend money, right? Because the other thing I was gonna ask you, like, do you feel like Pete Alonso is someone that maybe he's not worth this, but because he is who he is, because he's a lifelong Met, because of what he can mean to the history of the Mets, we'll give him a little bit more than maybe we should? Or do you feel like, no, you know what? This is the value. If we can't get him at that value, just cut ties and let's move on. Because I tend to lean like, I don't mind overpaying Pete Alonso. If we're throwing money around and we talk about how Steve Cohen's billion, got all these billions and money don't matter, which I don't think is realistic. But if we're gonna say things like that, then why not give our guy Pete a little bit extra?
I think that you got to really look and be smart, and think about how you're building a team. If you can do it and hit your financial targets that you want to hit. I mean, having to pay a $75 million luxury tax, which also, when you hit that third luxury tax threshold or whatever the number is, I know that you start lowering yourself in terms of the way you can draft. And we got to continue to build this team from ground up and have players and development constantly to find talent that's going to replace talent 7, 8, 9, 10 years down the road. Because these guys don't come up right away. I mean, it's very rare. You don't get a Paul Skeens every year that comes up a year after he's drafted. It's a rarity. But the thing with this particular situation, it's such an important contract negotiation. I think it might even be more important than what happens with Soto, because the fan base, so much of the fan base loves Pete Alonso. I love Pete Alonso, but I've also seen the team struggle with Pete Alonso. This is probably the first year that I can say, wow, like I don't know whether or not we definitely need him on this team, but what I will say is, seeing how he played in the playoffs, he stepped up, and without that final swing in Milwaukee, we're not even in the NLDS or the NLCS. Those don't happen without him hitting that home run. So his clutch quotient went up from with that one mighty swing of the bat, and I felt like he started getting a little looser as he was going to the playoffs. But the Dodgers were a buzzsaw. We can't talk about that team, but I think people put a lot of pressure on himself, and I think replacing 40 and 100 is an absolute really, really challenging stat line to overcome. You're not going to get that everywhere, and that's what Pete Alonso has pretty much done every year of his career since he's been in the majors.
Right, and that's why I lean. That's why I've felt like this for a while, and I know, as fans, and like I say, I ride the roller coaster. And I think it's fair to say that a lot of fans felt like, man, Is this core good enough? Do we need to bake this core up? And da 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 da. And obviously, when you talk about that, the guy that there was a chance that you could kind of do that with is Peter Alonso
Yeah.
because he's coming up on free agency, right? But for me, it's like, man, I feel like maybe if we could improve upon this core, add someone like Juan Soto, then they can also rise their level of play. And we kind of saw them do that on their own this year. So now even more, I feel like, you know what? I don't want to replace Peter Alonso with Juan Soto. I want to add Juan Soto to Peter Alonso, to
Yes.
Francisco Lindor, to Brandon Nimmo. And again, not ignorant, not saying you go out there and you do bad business or anything like that. Because I also don't want to give Peter Alonso 8, 9 years or anything like that. So I
Yeah.
hope I know one thing's like, ideally 4 or 5 years, maybe 6. You know what I'm saying? But I just feel like we should be that team now that should be able to add a Juan Soto, keep Peter Alonso, and bring in the pitching that we need. Um, but that's just me. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I
Um,
think we can. I just think that they have to get creative with how they, you know, distribute those contracts and how they leverage the AAV and you know what you pay in year one, so that way maybe you don't take all that hit this year, so you can load up on the talent that you need to fill these holes, because we got pitchers coming up, but they're not a year away.
Dude,
They might be 2 years away. Some of these guys, we've got a Jonah Tong who could
well,
potentially
yeah.
be a player in this lineup. We could have Brandon Sproat that could be a player in this lineup, but they're not coming up to be anything now, except maybe a spot starter or a fifth starter. We don't know what they have because they're still developing,
Right. And talk about the pitching. I was gonna ask you if you had to choose, or who do you think, if any at all, include Pete? You could, but really, let's Manaya and Severino, whom I gotta admit, man, I had done a post J. I think it was right as the season was winding down. I think we were still might have still been in the playoffs, but maybe after the season. But I was like, you know what? I would love to see the Mets try to get Manaya before he even opts out to agree to a contract.
Yeah,
Give him a little signing bonus. I forget what the math was, but I was like, give him a signing bonus. Try to bring up the AAV to about 18 a year.
yeah,
Give him 4 years. I think it was like
yeah.
whatever, 72 million, whatever the hell it came out to. And then we saw Kikuchi sign a couple of days ago for $21 million a year. And I was like, oh boy.
Kikuchi went to the Angels, right?
To the Angels, yeah, I think it
Right.
was 3 years, 63 million, so 21 million AAV. So obviously that brings up the price for guys like Manaya and Severino. And I was like, damn, do you really want to pay these guys that kind of AAV? If that maybe even higher now. I think Sean Manaya more potential at this point, and is a little bit younger than a Kikuchi, in my opinion. I don't know,
Yeah.
but I haven't really watched Kikuchi that much. Severino. So it's like, do you see any of those guys coming back? If only one, who do you think, or who do you prefer?
Look, I think if I was to choose between Sevi and Manaya, I think the answer depends on Iglesias, because if Iglesias is back, I want Sevi holding the sign. No, um, no, but seriously, like I think that it's tough. I mean, lefties, a dominant left-hander is gold in this business, and I think that Shawmaniah took a step forward this year in his second half and changing his delivery to mimic Chris Sale's. I think that was brilliant for him. If he could turn around and put that together for an entire season, then we might have something for a couple of years that we can harness as a great weapon in this lineup, in this rotation, I should say. Sevi, has had an up and down career. He good year, bad year, good year, bad year, and um, you know we could be seeing Sevi on a down year coming up. So it's really tough. It's really tough, and it's hard to let the Angels dictate the market, but they always seem to do it. They did it with Rendon, paying him a ridiculous amount of money. They did it with, obviously, paying Trout the money that they did, and no one expected Trout to get injured the way that he has. He's been on the IL more than he should, but they've had this penchant of giving out these big, massive contracts forever. When they talk about one dumb owner, it's Artie Moreno, and it was the owner of the Texas Rangers who were just throwing money at these free agent contracts.
You know what, Jay, though, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm afraid of us becoming right now. Because you're hearing people talk about, we have the money, we can get anybody we want just for the money. And I'm like, even with this Juan Soto situation, and I get it, and it's obvious that he's trying to get as much as he can. But it's like I did a post earlier today, and I was like, I would feel much better if I heard that the Mets were the favorite because Juan Soto hit it off with Carlos Mendoza in the meeting or something like that. Or Juan Soto liked the Mets farm, like we heard from A-Rod, back in the days or whatever when he signed with Texas. But all I hear is the Mets are the favorite because nobody's going to outbid Steve Cohen. And I'm like, okay, I don't want to be that team that always has to throw the most money at players because, let's be honest, it doesn't always work out. You just mentioned a couple of guys who, when they got the money, not many people were saying, oh my gosh, that's a bad contract for Anthony Rendon. Like, oh, that's a lot of money, but like, oh, he's a good ball player, Mike Trout, the best player in baseball. You understand what I'm saying? But is that a good contract? It's looking to be like a horrible contract. You know what I'm saying? Tough. So I don't want to be that team, but I know that for us to maybe get to not to be that team, maybe we have to do it now a little bit. But I also think what we did this year on the field goes a long way towards that. And again, I don't want to keep you too long. We've been here. I want to thank you again. I haven't even been able to really get to the comments how I wanted to with everybody. But I
have any more? I could stay a few more minutes.
No, yeah. Because I do want to ask you something, and I got a couple of them highlighted. Well, not ask you something, but just because to be responsible, if we're here talking about the Mets, the guys to at least throw around the whole Juan Soto situation, and there's actually been some movement now, as opposed to the last, the first, even when we were on with Keith and the first, the last few weeks. Now we've had meetings, we've learned, depending on who you listen to, there have been offers, there haven't been offers, there were gonna be offers, there were offers late last week. Bottom line, I think we can be comfortable in saying that the offers have been made. And then we also heard today that these initial offers are just that, initial offers to just gouge where everybody's interest level is. Maybe there'll be some eliminations. Maybe there won't be eliminations. We'll see how that goes. But how are you feeling about this Juan Soto situation? Because I'll be honest, it depends on the day I wake up. Sometimes I feel good. Sometimes I don't feel too good. I've always felt once he was traded to the Yankees, he was never leaving there. I do wonder how much of just trying to use, the Mets and Steve Cohen to drive up the price. We hear about a good relationship between Cohen and Boris. So does Scott Boris really want to play that game? I don't know. How do you feel about this whole thing? And I apologize to those that were hoping we stayed away from Juan Soto, but you can't stay away from Juan Soto.
You can't. Listen, it's his announcement this morning almost broke the internet, right?
Oh my God, unbelievable though, Jay. You see how gullible we are, how thirsty.
Yeah, no,
I didn't even really see that until people started sharing it. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, what? This is not how he's gonna announce what the hell he's. It may be like that, but that looked like a commercial. Like whatever. Anyways,
I'll tell you, I don't know that there'll be an announcement similar to that. Like, I don't think we could ever go back to having the LeBron James decision being replayed in baseball.
Jay, I was joking with my friends in a group chat earlier today, and I said, you know what we need for Juan Soto to go to, like, I don't know, somewhere in Queens and announce that he's going to the Red Sox. You know what I'm saying? Something crazy like that. Not even come to either the Mets or the Yankees, but make his announcement like LeBron style. Like, just go
That
ahead
would
and do
be
that
wild.
already, like with all this nonsense. But anyways,
Yeah, no, listen, I think I past off seasons have felt incredibly long. This off season hasn't felt long. We've only been out of the playoffs for just over a month. So we are where we are. This is the absolute time when the number one free agent typically signs. It's not going to drag out, I don't believe, into December. I think it's going to be announced on Black Friday, if you ask me. I think it's not going to wait the weekend.
wow, this week,
I think it's going to be this week. I think it's going to
wow,
be this week. I just don't think I can't see it dragging out that long because people are starting to get anxious about where they're going to play. And listen, last season Scott Boras lost a lot of his free agents. He got fired by several of his players because they didn't get the money that they were expecting, and they in some cases signed super late. So I can see players starting to say, "Hey, buddy, what about me?" You can't. I think it's gotta. I think there's a point that hasn't been stated. My personal opinion, because he has to then pivot to his other free agents and start hosting other meetings. Not that he hasn't already on the low, but I think everyone is waiting for the Soto decision to be made, and the entire landscape of baseball is going to be decided by where he goes. Because now you have to compete against that within your division, interdivisionally, in the same market. I mean, losing the Juan Soto sweepstakes to us for the Mets, I think it'll be pretty tough. We'll recover, but
yeah.
I think it's more pivotal for the Yankees to win it than it is for us. So, um,
No, I agree. I
if
agree
he
with that.
wants to
And
be
shout out to
here,
no, go ahead, go ahead. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
If he wants to be here, then he's gonna be here. And if it's about money, he's not gonna get paid more money anywhere else. He's not.
No, for sure. I just wonder, like, how much would we have to go over? And again, like, does it really matter? I guess not, but it does matter because there are rules in place to kind of curtail that, right? And we know that no matter how much money these owners have, one thing these owners hate is having to subsidize these other teams, and these teams don't use the money to try to win. They use it for other
Yeah.
things. You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Right.
So yeah, they'll pay the luxury tax and stuff like that as long as you win. And Steve Cohen has said it. I don't mind spending the money as long as we win.
Yep.
If we don't win, that's when it becomes a problem. But hopefully we spend it and we win. I'll be honest, I'm just like exhausted with the whole Soto situation, the whole
Yeah.
conversation. Like I don't even care. To me, it's like what, just alert me when he's gonna announce the signing or when it's been announced already. Who the hell knows how he's gonna do it, right? Are we gonna get it through a Jeff passing bomb? Is he gonna break it himself? Is he gonna have how I've seen some people suggest on X? Is it gonna be Steve Cohen that's gonna break it? Who the hell knows? Is he gonna, like I don't know. Is Scott Boras and Juan Soto gonna say no? We want to be the guys to break the news. Let us post something about it first. Or are they gonna let the media break it? I don't know. Whatever it is, just let it happen so we can move on. I want to know if this guy's ours, not ours. I want to cry if he's not ours. I want to be exuberant if he is, because I will have a reaction. As much as I've said, I'm uncomfortable with the years. I hate the idea of all this money. He's not better than Aaron Judge and da 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 da. I still want him to
Yeah.
be
No,
a
I
New
want
York
him
Met.
to. Yeah, I
I've
want
wanted
him
him for a long time.
to.
But let's get into a little bit here. A lot of them are old. A lot of them are old. Um, let's see. But there was a couple of ones I've starred here that I wanted to. There was, let's see, because some guys. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Well, Darren asked, what was your greatest moment as a Met fan? Man, listen. I think we may have spoken about it, but I don't know.
Before this season, it was the September 21st home run in 2001. Um, Being at that game, first game back after 9/11 as a New Yorker living through 9/11, it was Mike Piazza is my favorite player. Kind of in my 20s, like he made me love the Mets and like more than I did for the 1986 Mets because I had just started liking them when I was 10. And, as I'm becoming an adult and, choosing to follow the Mets and staying with the Mets. And, I mean, it was like that heroic blast that was it for me. But then it was, it was my favorite moment was probably being at the NLCS clinching game this year and seeing Francisco Lindor hit a grand slam to propel us to victory.
Nice. I'm sorry. I'm little because I'm
Sorry,
thinking like, man,
NLDS. What's that?
I'm thinking to myself here, and I'm like, what's my favorite moment? And obviously, there's games like that. But as I'm thinking, like a little selfishly, personally, for me, I think my favorite moment was a game that I went to with my nephew. I think it was 2017. We went to a doubleheader only because I had gone to a game before that, right, Jay, with him, and we had to leave like in the second, third inning. He might have been about 7 years. He might be watching too. He lives out in Florida. What's up, Jaden? And we went to a game, and the little kid he wanted nothing to do with baseball, right? Um, he comes back to visit. My cousin, who's an attorney, has some great seats, gives me 2 tickets. We're sitting right by third base, like second row. And I'm like, you know what? I'll tell you this little mutt. He's a little older now. Now he's like freaking 6'4" towers over me.
He
So
better
like
be
I'll
taking you
take
to
him.
games now.
Right, exactly. He should. So I'm like, let me take him to the game, totally expecting to leave, but it's a doubleheader. Maybe we get to watch one game. And to my shock, we stayed the whole game. And he's a psycho Met fan now, so pretty much in that time. And thank you to Yoenis Cespedes because he loved Cespedes at that time. He used to go nuts for Cespedes. So I think that's my favorite moment as a Met fan, and I had pretty much nothing to do with the Mets, but everything to do with the Mets, right? But it's just like something personal for me because it made a connection with me and my nephew that we still
Nice.
share.
I love that.
Let's see
You have
what we got.
kids?
No kids. Those are my kids. My sister's kids and my kids. My guy Ty says he loves Blockbuster. When you were talking about working in Blockbuster, if he misses
Yep.
Blockbuster,
I think I might want to make a Blockbuster piece next. But yeah, I miss
really.
Blockbuster. Blockbuster Friday nights were lit, man. It was crazy. And you know what? It wasn't just about like renting movies. It was also about like, seeing couples argue over what movies they were gonna rent. Parents telling their kids, "You can't load up on this much more candy. Get out of here." And then it was also like, kicking thieves out of the store. There was always a vibe happening in Blockbuster.
Man. Shout out to Jeff the accountant. I saw him post. I forget where it came from. Somebody posted something about Blockbuster. He's talked about how the movies during the week and then going down the weekends and getting some couple of video games to rock out for the weekend. So shout out to our boy. I said Josh. I can't believe I said because I'm looking at Jeffrey's thing. Yeah, the accountant. I saw him post that earlier. Because my boy Jeffrey says, "Is your son a Mets fan?" I mean, like if he wasn't, what are we doing here?
Funny story about that. My son, he's like most kids that don't always do everything that follows in their dad's footsteps.
Right.
I played basketball growing up, and it's a pretty good basketball player. And like I I didn't play college ball, but I played some high school, and decided to not push to try to make varsity. I played JV over at Christ the King High School in Queens.
Oh, nice.
So we had a good team. We had some good runs, and I loved the game, and I tried introducing him to the game. And as a kid, he had no interest in it. He had no interest at all. And then I don't know, somewhere about the age of 10, he caught the bug, and he's a Nets fan, not a Knicks fan, which I absolutely hate. Because he thought that he was going to follow the Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, James Harden Nets. And now he's stuck with this Nets team that might be a lottery pick team this year. And listen, they beat the Warriors last night because I feel like the Warriors punted the game last night. But man, uh, it's tough. But he was a Yankees fan.
Oh gosh.
Had an Aaron Judge jersey and everything, and I couldn't do anything to convince him otherwise that he should be a Mets fan. So I let it go. I just, I cringed about it. I'm like, I'm gonna have a kid who's a Mets fan and a Yankees fan. Like, I might as well disown him now. But he's come around, and he lives in Long Island with his mom, and I think being in Long Island is better for him because he's able to find, like, you know what, maybe my heart is closer to Queens than it is the Bronx. And he came aboard, and he loves Pete Alonso, loves Francisco Lindor, obviously loves everything that has happened with OMG. But he likes going to games. He enjoys the games. He could talk about baseball, collects baseball cards, like a lot of kids. But he plays basketball first and foremost. So, like, he could tell you every stat about basketball. He's also, like, tremendously into fantasy football. And again, a team that I don't root for. He roots for the Giants, and I'm a Jets fan. So
That's funny. No, that's funny because, like I said, I don't have kids, right? But it's funny because my family, like, okay, like myself, my mom roots for the Mets, my sister roots for the Mets. I have a cousin that roots for the Mets, but most of our family, family, my extended family, my aunts, uncles, are Yankee fans, right? My nephew's kid, my niece and nephew's kid, dad is a Yankee fan. And Jay, he would like try to drill them, like, well, you guys be guys because of me. You guys got to be Yankee fans. You know, we don't like the Mets. Da, da, da. And I used to sit back, laugh, take him to games every now and then. You know what I mean? Like after the fact, when my nephew finally came around, taking a game, take my niece to games, and forget they can't stand the Yankees. They rag on their dad, like they get on. They trash talk with him more than I do now. And I just sit back and laugh, and he gets so frustrated. I'm like, dude, you tried to make them hate the Mets. I never tried to make them hate the Yankees. They just saw my passion for the Mets. Yeah. They watched me watch games. Whenever I would spend time with them, I would take them to games, and it is what it is, man. It's just funny, but it's also like I wonder if my nephew was more of I'm gonna be opposite of what that is, like you're talking about with your son, because you hear that all the time.
Yeah, a lot of kids that all the time. And then at some point they come around. So maybe at some point he'll realize the greatness of the Knicks.
There you go. Yeah, for sure. At least the Knicks. Come on. Well, no, the Yankee stuff, but he's kind of come around. Let's see what Darren says here. J Mac, you're thinking of others like your son and supporting your family through your creativity and your life experiences and various occupations have inspired you to be the six you are today. Obviously, this is going way back, and it's like I said, man. You felt like you gave us a open book of your life, but it's inspirational, brother, and things like that are important.
I appreciate that. And the one thing about this journey that regardless of whether or not OMG is going to continue, I definitely feel like this journey has given me a little bit more of a platform to kind of help people through some times where they might go through creative ruts and give up, or kind of give up on things that they're passionate about. It doesn't have to be art. It could be it could be a class that you take that you give up on. Like, there's been a lot of things in my life that I walked away from. Like, I got divorced twice in my life. There's something about that to me. Like, when I got married both those times, I didn't feel like I was going to get divorced. It's tough. Like, I quit playing basketball in high school because I threw up in practice, and I could not stand the coach that was coaching me. And I think some of it might have been maturity, and I think some of it was also like, hey, you know what? This is not the leader that I want to work for. I knew that early on. And it turned out that the guy was involved in a lot of scandals. So I might have saved myself in the process, but I honestly to to tell you the truth, it's um, not quitting on my dream and doing this has been something that I needed to do for myself. And I think a lot of times that the easy road is the road that has less conflict, and the road that that lets you sleep a little bit more at night. And I've had a lot of sleepless nights. I've had a lot of nights, where I'm, concerned about what time am I waking up so I can get this job done, and am I working, all through the night, the night before Christmas to get through, Christmas orders, or things that I have to do, like, those types of those types of moments are the things that make me feel like, wow, you know what, like I persevered through something, and I want to share that with people. I want my story to be told, so that way, I hope to inspire people with it. Like I want to help people find their creative talent. I want to teach people how to do some of the stuff that I do. um, I'm all about that. I don't want to just hoard something for myself. There's a lot of talented creatives, far more talented people than me, that aren't creating for some reason or another. It could be financial. It could be just getting in their own way. And
Right.
I'd love to help people unlock that.
No, no, for sure, man. And like I said before, man, I thank you for sharing that with us. And I think you've accomplished some of that tonight for sure. Like you're inspiring me just by listening to you and realizing that I sometimes get in my own way, like you just said right now. Um,
Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you, man. Yeah, listen, that's all it is, man. That's all it is. I don't know. I don't think I know more than anybody. I don't think anything like that. I'm just a passionate fan that actually talk about my team. You know what I'm saying? I've started doing these little thing, and you guys are taking a liking to it, and you guys join, and we'll be here doing it as long as I'm able to do it. But thank you for that. My guy Petey, who's probably it's past Petey's bedtime, so I don't know if he'll hears answer this, but he says, "Is it full panic city if the Mets don't sign Soto or for the both of us?" I'll let you answer first.
Um, Panic City, I don't believe in it. I don't believe Panic City uh, is in Queens anymore. I think that went away with old ownership, and with tearing down the final two or three junkyards behind City Field. Those ghosts are over. No, I don't believe it's Panic City. I think we'll pivot, and we'll pivot really well. In fact, I think that we could win without Soto. It'd be great to win with him, and to have a Batman a Robin to the Batman that's already there.
I agree. I agree. I second that. It wouldn't be Panic City for me. It would be huge. It would mean a lot of things, both on the field, off the field, everything. I'm not going to deny any of that, but I don't think also, like you said, that it would be crippling, as it would have been in the past. I think we have good people in place, and I think this guy will keep trying. Obviously, right now you think, oh my gosh, there's a generational talent. There's going to be no more opportunities like this. There's always opportunities. We don't know who's going to be the next guy that comes up. Maybe not as talented, but that can have the same kind of impact, in different ways. So yeah, not Panic City for me. My guy Ty says your open was great. Um, Again, great stuff.
Thank you.
Uh, George says that cool stories, good memories. Ty again, a lot of fun. Patty, I think, second that. What do we got here? And that's what George said. Nice not to be talking about Soto. Awesome show. Nah, thank you, George. Thank you. Jeff says he enjoyed it. Man, that's pretty much his. Oh, there, yeah, that was huge. That was huge. That's when we knew, like, yo, this guy's what we needed right here. When he ran that ground ball out, yeah, we ended up losing the game and all of that. But for him to run that out, and like it set the tone, like Darren said, like, yo, we're gonna play to the end. And it got to the point where then I kept saying, yeah, 27 outs. You're gonna complete it to New York Mets. You gotta make sure you're ready to play 27 outs.
Facts.
And Easy came in late, but Easy always throwing cold water on things. But I think we agree no more than 5 years for Pete. Doesn't like the idea of giving Manaya a 4-year deal. I hear you, brother. I hear you. You'd rather give Sevy a 2-year deal. Jay, again, man, this has been great. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope the people
It's
enjoyed it.
great.
I appreciate you. Before we go, again, I think we've done this, but I think it's only right. It's Thanksgiving. Maybe two or three things. One thing, as a fan, obviously, we know we're thankful for our families, we're thankful for our health, we're thankful for all of those things. But as a fan of the New York Mets, if you want to give us one or two things, three things that you're thankful for.
Yeah, listen, I'm thankful for having a competent ownership that is making solid baseball decisions to look at the entire organization, not just you know the product on the field, but looking at all levels to make sure that this is something that could be repeated year over year. Thankful for the fan experience. Thankful for allowing fans to have a voice in the ballpark. You know, Cohen's have done that since they've come, but obviously at the early part of the year, or I think the early part of the late part of last year, they did that town hall to talk about what the status of the area around the ballpark is going to be. I wouldn't have a platform like I did without ownership that thinks differently. So, I'm really grateful to that from the team perspective, but from a fan base, like we got some of the most passionate, most knowledgeable fans out there, and these different communities and spaces that are out here between Twitter and YouTube and Discords and Instagram, like such a talented and creative fan base. Like I don't know that many of these types of conversations are happening, and it's great to have this ability to connect with others that are like-minded and are as passionate and want to learn about how you became a fan, or what it is that you do within this fandom. And I'm always surprised. I'm not surprised by it, but I'm always surprised by people who I may not have known, and you spend a little time getting to know them, and it's like, wow, like what was I missing out on? So I'm grateful. I'm grateful for our community that we have here, and I'm thankful for you. And fans like yourself that have these platforms that share with others and bring people on to talk ball, and it makes it a fun part of being a fan. So I appreciate everything tonight, man, and this entire journey as a Mets fan that we're on.
No, for sure, man. And like you, man, yeah, I'm thankful for people like you. I'm thankful for everyone in this chat, for everyone that follows, that watches, that goes back and watches the replays, that likes and shares and all that good stuff. I'm thankful, like you, for the ownership that we have in place now. An ownership that we know that has the resources and is willing to use these resources to give us the best team that they possibly can. Um, I'm thankful for the leadership that they've put in place now. When David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza, even if I was skeptical at first, or had a wait and see attitude, which I think is only right. Um, I'm thankful for the season that this team gave me. Jay, I'm thankful for the 2024 season that this team gave us. Honestly, probably the one of the most fun seasons that we've had in a long time. Probably definitely in my adult life. I mean, 2015 was great. Don't get it wrong. 2022 was good, but the last month or so of 2022 were miserable. And that
Yeah,
offseason was miserable. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? So I'm thankful for the year that they gave me. I'm thankful that I was lucky enough to meet Sean Mania and play catch with Sean
It
Mania
was a
this
great
year.
experience.
That
Yeah,
was that was awesome. You know what I'm saying? I'm thankful for having met you. I'm thankful for all of it, and I'm looking forward to a great 2026. But again, brother, thank you for your time. That's what I'm mostly thankful for right now is you giving me this time and sharing so much um what I think is personal
yeah. That was
stuff
very
and what
personal.
what
You
you've
went
been
deep
through
tonight.
and how you've grown. So I appreciate you. And again, man, shout out to everybody in the chat. Shout out to everybody that always shows support. Jacob, little late, brother, but shout out to you. And thank you guys. Everybody have a happy and safe. I always say this: be safe out there. I know you're gonna go out there partying with all that good stuff. Be safe. Have
Be
a happy
safe.
Thanksgiving. And as always, let's go Mets. Jay, love you, brother. Thank you, man. Be
Love you,
good.
bro. Happy Thanksgiving, y'all. Take care.
All right, yo. Peace.
All right. Peace.